When someone makes a rude comment, the first reaction most of us feel is an instant rush of emotion. It could be anger, embarrassment, defensiveness, or even shock. The words hit fast, and before our brain fully processes what was said, our body is already reacting. Maybe your jaw tightens, your tone sharpens, or your heart races as you prepare to fire back. This is the exact moment where most people lose control. Not because they don't know how to handle the situation, but because they don't give themselves the space to think. And that's where the pause comes in. The pause is one of the simplest yet most powerful tools you can use when facing rudeness. It might only last a couple of seconds, but in those seconds you reclaim your authority over the situation. Instead of letting your emotions dictate your words, you give your brain time to catch up and choose how you want to respond. Think of it as hitting the reset button. Before anything damaging comes out of your mouth, you're not freezing or shutting down. You're giving yourself a buffer, a small space between what was said to you and what you decide to say back. Why is this so powerful? Because rude comments are often designed to provoke. Whether consciously or not, the person being rude usually wants a reaction. Maybe they want to embarrass you, get under your skin, or stir up drama. If you react immediately, you're playing directly into their hands. But when you pause, even for a breath, you deny them that satisfaction. Your silence speaks volumes. It says, "You don't get to control me. I choose how I respond." The pause can take many forms. It can be as simple as taking a slow breath before you answer. It can be maintaining eye contact for a moment without speaking. It can be sipping from your water, leaning back in your chair, or calmly adjusting your posture. These small, almost invisible acts buy you precious seconds, and those seconds are enough to shift you from reacting impulsively to responding intentionally. Neuroscience even backs this up to the initial wave of emotional response is usually strongest in the first few seconds. If you can ride out that wave, the intensity fades, and with it fades the urge to snap back. Imagine this scenario: you're presenting an idea at work, and a colleague interrupts with a snide remark. Well, that's not exactly groundbreaking. The old you might snap, "At least I'm contributing something." And suddenly, the room is tense, and the conversation is about the argument instead of your idea. But if you pause, even just long enough to breathe and remind yourself, "I control my tone," your response could shift completely. Instead of escalating, you might say calmly, "I hear you. What direction would you suggest?" In that moment, the power shifts. The rude comment doesn't derail you. You've stayed composed and kept the focus where it belongs. The beauty of practicing the pause is that it builds discipline over time. At first, it may feel unnatural because you're so used to defending yourself instantly. But the more you practice it, the more automatic it becomes. You start to notice that you don't get rattled as easily. You start to enjoy the silence because you know it's working for you instead of against you. And people notice it too. They see that you're not someone who gets dragged into every argument or flustered by every insult. They start respecting your composure, even if they don't admit it. The pause is not about ignoring the rude comment or pretending it didn't hurt. It's about giving yourself the power of choice. Do you want to address it directly? Do you want to brush it off with humor? Do you want to set a boundary? You can only make that choice if you give yourself space to think. Without the pause, the rude comment controls you. With the pause, you control the outcome. And in the end, that's what responding without losing your cool is really about. Choosing to protect your peace over proving your point. When someone is rude to you, the easiest trap to fall into is believing their words define something about you. The comment feels sharp, it cuts, and your mind immediately starts playing with the idea that maybe they're right, maybe you deserve it, or maybe others see you the same way. But here's the truth that changes everything. Rudeness is rarely about you. It's almost always a reflection of the other person, their stress, their insecurity, or their need to assert themselves in a way that feels powerful in the moment. When you learn not to take it personally, you stop carrying around other people's baggage as if it belongs to you. Think about the last time someone snapped at you. Maybe it was a coworker in a meeting, a cashier at the grocery store, or even a family member. The words may have felt personal, but step back for a moment. Was that really about you? Or was it about the fact that they were having a bad day, felt overlooked, or simply didn't know how to communicate their frustration in a healthy way? Most rude comments are a mirror of what's happening inside the other person, not a true reflection of you. When you internalize this, it's like putting on armor. The words bounce off instead of sinking in. Taking things personally gives power to the rude person. It means you let their bad mood dictate your emotions. You let their quick remark decide whether your day feels good or bad. But when you choose not to personalize it, you protect your peace. You can hear the same words, but they no longer carry the same weight. Instead of thinking, "Why would they say that about me?" you start thinking, "That's about them." And in that small shift, you take away their power to hurt you. Here's an example. Imagine you're driving and someone honks aggressively, maybe even yells something rude out the window. If you take it personally, you stew on it. You replay it in your head and feel yourself getting angrier. But if you choose not to take it personally, you realize that person could be stressed, late to work, or just frustrated with their own life. Suddenly, it's not about you, it's about their state of mind. And with that perspective, you let it go instead of carrying it with you for the rest of the day. This mindset doesn't mean you excuse bad behavior or pretend rudeness doesn't hurt. It means you separate their actions from your identity. You can still address it, you can still set boundaries, but you do it without letting the insult settle into your self-worth. When you refuse to personalize, you create space between who you are and what was said. You remind yourself, their words don't define me. My response does. It's also worth remembering that everyone has their own lens of the world, shaped by their experiences, beliefs, and emotions. A rude comment may be less about the truth and more about the perspective of the person saying it. If someone says, "You'll never be good at this," what they may really be revealing is their own belief that success is impossible for them. If someone mocks your efforts, it might be because they've never had the courage to try themselves. By not taking it personally, you avoid absorbing the weight of someone else's limiting beliefs. Over time, practicing this mindset changes the way you carry yourself. You become less reactive, less defensive, and more centered. People notice that you don't get thrown off balance easily. Rude comments start to feel smaller, almost like background noise. And you realize something important. You don't have to fight every negative word, because not every negative word is even about you. So the next time someone says something rude, pause for a moment and remind yourself this is about them, not me. Their words are a reflection of where they are, not who I am. When you live by that truth, you don't just respond without losing your cool. You walk away knowing your worth was never touched in the first place. When someone throws a rude comment your way, the natural reaction is to mirror their tone. If they get loud, you get louder. If they're sarcastic, you throw sarcasm back. It feels instinctive, like a way of defending yourself and making sure you don't look weak. But the problem with matching negativity is that it escalates conflict instead of controlling it. Suddenly, what started as one rude remark turns into an argument, and your energy is spent proving yourself instead of protecting your peace. The real power lies not in matching their tone, but in choosing calm, neutral language that steadies the interaction and keeps you in control. Calm language has a unique effect on people. It disrupts the pattern they expect. When someone is rude, they anticipate defensiveness, anger, or retreat. They're prepared for a fight or for dominance. But when you respond calmly, without hostility or sarcasm, it throws them off balance. You're no longer playing their game. You're creating your own rules. It communicates a simple but strong message. I won't be dragged down to that level. Neutral language doesn't mean you're passive or letting someone walk over you. It means you're intentionally removing emotional fuel from the situation. Instead of, "Why would you say something so stupid?" you might say, "I hear your point. Let's look at the options." Instead of, "Don't talk to me like that," you might calmly say, "I'd like us to keep this respectful." The difference isn't just in words, it's in tone. A level voice, steady and unshaken, is often more powerful than shouting could ever be. Let's take an everyday example. Imagine you're in a group discussion and someone cuts in with, "Well, your idea doesn't make any sense." If you snap back with irritation, you risk escalating the tension and making the entire exchange about ego. But if you keep your tone calm and say, "Okay, I hear you. What do you think could work better?" you shift the focus back to problem solving. You haven't ignored their comment, but you've responded in a way that redirects the energy. Now, instead of looking defensive, you look confident and composed. Responding with neutral language is also about choosing words that don't inflame the situation. Certain phrases are like gasoline. They make everything burn hotter. Words like always, never, or direct attacks on the other person's character tend to escalate things quickly. But neutral phrasing keeps the conversation grounded in the issue, not personal attacks. Saying, "This situation is frustrating," is very different from saying, "You're frustrating." One keeps the focus on the problem, the other makes it personal. It's also worth noting that calm language isn't just about what you say, it's how you say it. Your body language and tone of voice carry as much weight as your words. A soft but firm tone, steady eye contact, and relaxed posture signal confidence. They show that you're not rattled even when faced with disrespect. Often, the calmer you remain, the more the other person becomes aware of how out of line their behavior looks in contrast. There's another benefit too: calm and neutral responses protect your reputation. When others are watching, whether colleagues, family members, or strangers, they notice how you handle yourself under pressure. If you lose your temper, that's what sticks in their minds. But if you remain calm, they see strength, maturity, and self-control. In many cases, the way you handle rudeness earns more respect than any witty comeback ever could. Practicing this takes discipline. It means resisting the urge to the exchange by landing the sharper insult. It means remembering that your goal is not to dominate the other person, but to stay in control of yourself. Each time you choose calm and neutral language, you're strengthening that discipline. Over time, it becomes second nature. and you'll notice how quickly conflicts shrink instead of explode. So when the next rude comment comes your way, resist the temptation to match it. Instead, steady your voice, choose words that de-escalate, and keep your language neutral. You don't need to fight fire with fire. You put out the flames by refusing to hand over more fuel. And that's how you win without losing your cool. One of the hardest things about dealing with rude comments is knowing where to draw the line. You may pause, you may not take it personally, you may even respond with calm words, but what happens when the rudeness continues? That's where boundaries come in. Boundaries are not about pushing people away or creating conflict. They're about protecting your peace while still treating others with respect. When someone crosses the line, you don't have to yell, insult, or match their behavior. You can stand firm in a way that is clear, respectful, and powerful. Setting boundaries begins with understanding your own limits. Everyone has a threshold for what they will and won't tolerate. For some people, a sarcastic comment here and there doesn't faze them. For others, constant sarcasm feels exhausting and disrespectful. You have to be honest with yourself about what kind of behavior drains you, and once you know that, you're better equipped to communicate it to others. Boundaries aren't about controlling someone else's behavior. They're about clearly stating what you will and won't accept. When someone is repeatedly rude, a simple and respectful boundary might sound like, "I want to continue this conversation, but not in this tone," or "I'd appreciate it if we could keep this professional." Notice that this isn't an attack. You're not saying you're rude or you're the problem. You're pointing to the behavior and making it clear what needs to change for you to continue engaging. That difference matters because boundaries delivered with respect reduce defensiveness. They shift the focus from the person's character to their actions. Another way to set boundaries is by limiting your engagement. If a friend, colleague, or family member continues to be rude, despite you addressing it, you can respectfully distance yourself. For example, "I can't stay in this conversation if it keeps going this direction," or even, "I need to step away and we can talk later." Again, it's not about punishment, it's about self-respect. You're signaling that your energy and time are valuable, and you won't allow them to be drained by constant negativity. Boundaries also help model healthy communication. When you calmly assert what's okay and what isn't, you're teaching others how to interact with you. People may test your boundaries at first, but over time they learn that you're consistent. And consistency is key. If you set a boundary, but don't enforce it, people won't take it seriously. But if you calmly stand by it every time, others start to adjust their behavior, even if only out of necessity. Respectful boundaries can also preserve relationships that might otherwise collapse under tension. Without boundaries, rudeness often builds resentment. You stay quiet, but inside you're collecting little bits of frustration until it finally erupts. But by addressing it early with respectful clarity, you give the relationship a chance to improve instead of silently deteriorating. In a workplace, this might prevent ongoing hostility. In a family, it might stop years of unspoken bitterness from piling up. The key is to deliver boundaries without hostility. The calmer you are, the stronger you come across. Yelling, blaming, or mocking may feel satisfying in the moment, but it undermines your message. A respectful tone says, "I value myself enough to speak up, and I value you enough to be clear without attacking." That balance is what makes boundaries so powerful. It's important to accept that not everyone will respond positively to your boundaries. Some may resist, push back, or accuse you of being too sensitive. But that's not a reason to back down. Boundaries aren't about pleasing everyone else, they're about protecting your peace. Even if the other person doesn't like it, you'll feel stronger and calmer knowing you stood up for yourself without losing your cool. So when someone crosses the line with repeated rudeness, don't let it slide endlessly. Don't explode with anger either. Step in with clarity, with composure, and with respect. Boundaries don't create distance, they create respect. And in the end, that respect starts with you. When someone comes at you with rudeness, the energy in the room shifts instantly. It gets heavy, tense, and uncomfortable. Most people either mirror that energy by snapping back or withdraw completely. But there's another path, one that not only protects your calm, but also completely changes the tone of the interaction. You can shift the energy with empathy or humor. Both are powerful tools because they interrupt the cycle of negativity and replace it with something the other person didn't expect. Empathy may sound counterintuitive at first. Why would you respond with understanding to someone who is being disrespectful? The answer is simple. Empathy isn't about excusing their behavior, it's about changing the direction of the interaction. Often, rudeness comes from a place of stress, insecurity, or frustration. When you respond with something like, "Sounds like you've had a tough day," you take the sting out of the moment. Instead of adding fuel to the fire, you diffuse it. Sometimes, the other person may even feel seen and calm down because you acknowledged what they might be going through. For example, imagine a coworker snapping, "Why are you always late with these reports?" You could snap back with defensiveness, or you could say, "I can tell this is stressing you out. I'll make sure you have what you need today." That doesn't mean you're admitting fault if it's not true. It means you've chosen empathy over escalation. You've recognized that their tone is more about their stress than your worth. And often, that moment of empathy is enough to soften their edge and bring the conversation back to a reasonable level. On the other hand, humor can be just as effective if used wisely. Humor works because it breaks the tension in a way that both disarms the rude person and lightens the mood for everyone else around. A playful comment, a witty line, or a light-hearted observation can shift the energy from hostility to something much less serious. But it's important to understand the balance. Humor should never be used to mock or belittle the other person, because that only escalates things. It should be light, clever, and directed at the situation, not the person. Picture yourself at a family gathering where someone says with a smirk, "Wow, you really piled your plate high." Instead of rolling your eyes or firing back, you could say, "What can I say? I'm doing the family proud." Suddenly, the jab loses its power. Everyone laughs, the focus shifts, and you remain in control of your emotions. Humor here doesn't ignore the rudeness, but it flips it on its head. Empathy and humor are both forms of leadership in a conversation. They show that you're not being dragged into someone else's negativity, but instead, you're guiding the tone in a better direction. Both require self-control because the easier reaction is to lash out. But when you master these tools, you make it clear that you're not just protecting your peace, you're also influencing the environment around you. People notice when you can stay lighthearted or compassionate in the face of tension, and it earns you respect. Of course, these tools aren't always foolproof. Sometimes the other person doesn't respond well to humor, or they may brush off your attempt at empathy. That's okay. The point isn't to fix them, it's to protect yourself. Even if they don't soften, you'll still walk away knowing you didn't lose your cool, and you didn't let their energy dictate yours. That in itself is a victory. The beauty of shifting energy with empathy or humor is that it puts you in charge of the atmosphere. You choose whether the moment spirals downward or steadies upward. And when you consistently choose to respond with understanding or levity instead of hostility, you'll notice something powerful. Rude comments stop having the ability to knock you off balance. They become just noise while you remain centered, composed, and even in control of the room. There comes a point in any conversation where you realize no matter what you say, the other person isn't interested in respect, resolution, or even hearing you out. They just want to stay rude, to push buttons, or to drag you into their negativity. In moments like these, the smartest and strongest thing you can do is walk away. Walking away is not weakness. It is one of the most powerful forms of self-control you can display. It says, "I value my peace more than this argument. I will not give my energy to something that doesn't deserve it." When emotions run high, we often feel the pressure to have the last word. We think, if I just explain myself one more time, maybe they'll understand, or if I clap back with something clever, I'll win this exchange. But the truth is, when someone is committed to being rude, there's no winning. You can't win an argument that was never about truth or understanding in the first place. What you can win is your freedom. By refusing to play the game at all, walking away keeps you from being trapped in a cycle where you trade insult for insult, frustration for frustration. Sometimes walking away looks literal. You physically remove yourself from the situation. You excuse yourself from the table, you leave the room, or you cut the phone call short. Other times, it's more subtle. You emotionally disengage, you stop responding to the negativity. You let the other person talk themselves out while you conserve your energy. Both are powerful because both communicate the same message: your peace of mind is non-negotiable. Walking away doesn't mean you're avoiding all conflict. In fact, it means you're choosing your battles with wisdom. Not every rude comment requires a response. Not every person deserves your explanation. If you answered every insult, you'd spend your whole life drained and distracted. By walking away, you're protecting your time and mental space for the people and conversations that truly matter. There's also something disarming about walking away with grace. Most rude people expect a reaction. They want you to get flustered, angry, or defensive because that feeds their energy. But when you calmly step back and choose silence over sparring, you deny them the satisfaction. They may get louder at first, but eventually they realize you won't engage. That silence, that calm exit, is louder than any comeback you could ever deliver. Of course, walking away takes courage. It's not easy to let go of the desire to prove yourself or defend your point. It's even harder when pride whispers in your ear, telling you that leaving makes you look weak. But the truth is, anyone can argue. Anyone can shout back. It takes far more strength to hold your tongue, to stay composed, and to protect your peace by walking away. Strength isn't about staying in the fight, it's about knowing which fights are worth your presence. Over time, choosing to walk away when it's not worth, it changes how you see yourself. You no longer feel controlled by other people's words or moods. You start to recognize that not every opinion needs your response and not every insult deserves your attention. You begin to experience the freedom of emotional independence, the ability to step out of drama instead of being dragged into it. That freedom is one of the greatest gifts you can give yourself. At the end of the day, you can't stop rude people from existing. You can't control their words, their tone, or their attitude, but you can always control yourself. And sometimes the most powerful response is no response at all. Walking away preserves your dignity, protects your energy, and keeps your cool intact. Because the truth is, your peace is too valuable to waste on conversations that were never worth having in the first place. At the end of the day, responding to rude comments isn't about proving you're right, putting someone in their place, or showing how quick your wit can be. It's about protecting your own peace and carrying yourself with dignity, no matter how others choose to act. We've talked about pausing before you react, not taking things personally, choosing calm words, setting respectful boundaries, shifting the energy with empathy or humor, and finally, knowing when to walk away. Each of these tools is powerful on its own, but together, they form a mindset, a way of handling life that keeps you steady when others try to shake you. The truth is, you can't control people. You can't control their tone, their attitudes, or their rude remarks, but you can always control how you respond. And when you choose composure over chaos, respect over retaliation, and peace over pointless conflict, you don't just rise above the moment, you set an example. You show others that strength doesn't have to be loud, and self-control doesn't have to be passive. It is quiet confidence, calm authority, and the courage to value yourself enough not to be dragged down. So the next time someone throws a rude comment your way, remember, it's not about them. It's about you. It's about who you choose to be in that moment. Stay calm, stay kind, stay firm, and when necessary, step away. Because your energy, your peace, and your self-respect are too valuable to hand over to someone else's bad mood. And when you live that way, you don't just handle rude people. You master yourself,